Bringing SVG icons to life in a custom menu is as easy as creating a lightweight, reusable component and deploying it across the menu. In this tutorial, which is part 2 in our SVG Icons series, we're going to create this menu together, showing you how you can add interactivity using your custom icons. You can get all the files you need for the project at my GitHub, and you can find that link in the description. Just import the Canvas app and download the icons provided, and then follow along as we create this menu together. I'm Ryan Johnston. Now let's get creating. So in the demo app, it has one screen that has our completed menu in it that you can use as a reference, but we're going to go into this empty dashboard that just has our container ready to go to receive the components. And so we're going to create a single component for our menu elements. So let's go into components. And again, here's the original that you can reference. But we're going to create a new component. We're going to call it comp button template. And then let's go in here. We're going to create a width of 250 by 250. The size really doesn't matter because it's going to scale. And it's going to be against a dark background. So while we're designing, let's just go ahead and give it a nice dark color. And let's start with that little circle outline that we're trying to create. So we're going to insert a circle. And here we go. And we want that circle to be nearly the size of our component, but we've got to leave room for the text in the bottom. So let's do a width of parent dot width, and let's say -50. You can play around with this, and then we want it to be a circle, not an oval, so we'll set the height to the width. Okay, so now we've got a nice circle. We're going to center it, and so this is just one of those formulas you just begin to memorize. Parent.width divided by 2 minus self.width divided by 2 always centers your item. And let's put it just off the top. I found that if you say that it's, that y is 0, it kind of cuts off the top of the circle a little bit. Not sure exactly why, but we're going to say y equals 3. So that gives us our circle. But of course, we don't want it to be filled. We want it to be transparent with a white border. So we'll go in here and we'll change our color to transparent, change our border to 2, and make it white. Okay, so there's our circle. Ooh, let's get our circle named properly here. We're going to call this circle menu wrap. And we're all set. Now, let's add our label. And so we'll call this, let's change our text to Lotto, and we'll go bold, and we want white text. Oh, and we want it centered, of course. And then also, let's go center this thing relative to the component. So we're going to do parent dot width divided by 2 minus self dot width divided by 2. That gets it centered, and then let's put it right underneath the circle. So we'll say circle menu wrap dot y plus circle menu wrap dot height, and then that gives us our position, and we're going to call this label menu title. Okay, that's that. Now let's add our icon. So if you remember from the first tutorial, we don't add an icon, we actually add an image. And we're going to go ahead and get this one named properly. We'll call it image ICO menu. So again, if you recall from our previous video, even though we're treating it as an icon, it's still an image control. So I still put IMG as my prefix, but then I always put a second prefix, ICO, to just clarify that this is being used as an icon. So that's just how I do my naming conventions. You can do it however you want. And so this one we're going to want to size and center relative to the circle. So let's start with our centering, and we're going to say X is going to be, well, it's still going to be centered relative to everything else. So we'll say parent dot width divided by 2 minus self dot width divided by 2. And then our vertical is going to be relative to the circle. So we're going to say circle menu wrap dot height divided by 2 minus self dot height divided by 2, but we're just 3 pixels off the top with the Y element of that circle, so we have to add that in, plus the circle menu wrap dot Y. Okay, and now then that will have our icon centered right in the middle of it. Now, how big do we want this icon to be? So if we set the icon to, let's do the full circle, circle menu wrap dot width, and we want it to be square, so we'll set its height to its width, self dot width. Okay, that is going to like overwhelm this whole circle. So let's make it like, let's try like 0.75. You know, maybe let's make the square. Well, let's try that. We'll see what that looks like. Okay, so that gives us our icon. Now then, we actually need to put something in this image and take a look at it. So let us go to our image property. And again, remember, we don't actually import an actual graphic. We have to do this whole SVG thing. So we type this weird text that's data image slash SVG plus XML semicolon UTF-8, I know, and then a comma, and then we have to add this encode URL with double quotes, and then inside those double quotes we're going to put our SVG data. So I've opened up all of my SVG icons in VS Code, I've removed all of the double quotes, and we are ready to go. We don't need the XML tag, just the SVG tag. Let's come in here, paste it in, and boom, we are all set with our icon. I like that size. That seems about right, so let's roll with it. So now then, we've got kind of the basic look of our icon menu thing going here, but now then we need to add the interactivity. I'm holding the Alt button, and so I'm putting my mouse over it, and nothing's happening. So we need some cool interaction. How do we do that? Well, let's go with so with an icon, it has a hover property where you can change the hover color of it. An image does not have, well, an image does, but we don't have the ability to change the color of this icon through hovering. We also don't have an on mouse over event the way we do in JavaScript, where we can just say, okay, well, when my mouse goes over this color, I want you to not only change the color of the icon, but also let's change the color of this background circle. I want to do all this when we hover. We don't have the ability to do that yet in Power Apps. Hopefully that is coming soon. But in the meantime, we kind of have to do a bit of a workaround. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a button control, and this button control is going to sit over the top of it. We're going to get rid of the text here, and we are going to set all of its properties relative to the circle, the little menu wrapper that we've got. So our X is going to be circle menu wrap.x, and in fact what we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste that for simplicity, and our Y is going to be circle menu wrap.y, and our width is going to be circle menu dot width. Seeing a pattern here? And height is circle menu wrap dot height. Boom. We want it to, I'll keep our color in for the moment. So we have a circle behind it, and buttons are square, and there's no circle button control. So how do we make this thing into a circle? Well, one of the things that's great, notice that we've already got a nice little rounded corner on this button. If we just make that rounding big enough to go all the way to half the length of the sides, then we would actually end up with a circle. So let's see how that actually works here. So let's go into our border radius here, and we are going to say border radius is self.width divided by 2. And look at that, we've got this beautiful circle, well, a quarter of a circle at least, for our radius top left. And basically we just need to repeat this for all of our border radiuses. Bottom right, and bottom left, and radius top right. And now then, we have a circle button control. And of course, if you look and you put your mouse over it, it does all sorts of cool stuff. Love it. So that's semi-helpful. We begin with taking our fill color and making it transparent, because that's what we want, because we don't really want to see that button. And then we're also going to come down and we're going to make our, now we're going to adjust our hover color. So our hover color is where we're actually going to get our hover effect, where we're not able to actually change the color of the icon. when hovering, we're going to make this a semi-transparent color. I actually kind of like this blue that's the default. That's not bad at all. So we're just going to go with this, but instead of making it opaque, which is RGBA, the alpha value of 1, we're going to make it 0.2. And now then, look, you put your mouse over and you've got this nice little hover effect. Okay, brilliant. Now, when we click, we've got this white fill, so we need to change our pressed fill color to basically being just a transparent color, which we can get to by clearing that out. Then we can click on it and we get transparent. Or you could have just put in their RGBA 0. Okay, there we go. We click on it, and all we're doing is we are taking advantage of two things. We're taking advantage of the hover color of the button, and we are taking advantage of the pressed property, which we can use to do our color changes on our icon and on our circle, because that is one event that we can get a hold of in the code. So now then, we're going to go to our circle menu wrap, and we're going to change its fill color if the button overlay has been pressed. So let's go to our fill color here, and we're going to use this yellow here, and let's go into our fill. Now, the thing is, we only want this to be filled this way if the button has been pressed, which, by the way, we need to name that button. So let's name this button overlay. Okay, so we go into our circle menu. We've got our fill color here, but we're going to say only if button overlay dot pressed, then we're going to fill it with this color. Otherwise, it's going to be transparent. So we'll just change that to a 0. That makes it transparent. And, oh, forgot our comma. There we go. Okay, so now then, watch. We click on it, and now the background goes. We also want our border color to change to that yellow. So we'll just copy and paste this, and we'll go to border color, and border style, border color. And same thing. Whoops, actually, we want this to be white, right? If it's not. So 255, 255, and 1. All right. Perfect. We have got interaction going on. Last thing we have to do now is figure out how we recolor this icon. So it's a little less, this is the more complicated part of this whole thing. So with icons, if you recall from our last tutorial, if we want to change the fill color, we can go into the SVG definition, and we can say fill equal, and then let's make it black, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Well, look, nothing happened. And why is that? Because within the definition itself, in this path, and this is a one path icon, it has its own fill color hard-coded. So we've got to remove that. And when we do, now then, what's in the SVG declaration will override. So in the icon files that I've left for you on GitHub, I have left all of these little fills hanging out in there so that you go through the exercise of removing the ones that you need to, because that's something that will keep you from banging your head against the wall when you realize that sometimes these are hard-coded and you have to go clear them out. So if we want to change the fill color, we would need to come in here and interrupt this whole declaration and do some concatenating. And we're going to do that. We're going to get rid of this fill color, and we're going to come in here and say if button overlay dot pressed, then we want it to be some kind of a color. Pick your pick. I've copied and pasted a color already that we're going to use. It's just this lovely, it's just a light blue. And then if it is not pressed, we want it to be white. And so we can actually just use the word white, or you could use the hex code, which would be FFFFFF. And then we're going to end it, and there we go. So now then, if we press, it turns that bluish color, and if not, then we're good to go. Okay, so we basically have our functionality pretty well intact. Now then, how do we make this dynamic? So we need to pass to this component two items. We need to pass it the title, for the menu, and then the actual SVG data for the icon. So let's get those knocked out. We go to our main template control declaration here, and under custom properties, we're going to create a custom property. We're going to call it prop icon, and this is going to be the actual SVG icon, which is just text. So our input type is text, and we'll create it. And then our second property is the title. So we'll call this prop title. And it's also just a default text one. And so the text, this is super simple. We go in here to the text property and we call it comp button template dot prop title. And it's going to be as easy as that. Now, the icon is a little more complicated. What we could do is we could just come in here and say, get rid of our quotes there and say comp button template dot prop icon. And as long as we pass in our SVG icon, it would work. But there's the matter of how do we deal with changing the fill color? Because now then we've lost all of our if button, if but overlay dot pressed, we've lost all of that. So how do we deal with that? There's a couple different ways. The template that I've created that's that you have available to you does it one way. We're going to do it what I think is probably the cleaner, better way. And so let's undo and go back to our declaration. So we know that we need to replace any fill color with our own custom fill color. So what we're going to do is I'm going to capture this, and we're going to just copy, cut and paste, and put it down here where we don't need it. And then we're going to come in here and we're going to say fill equal fill color as a placeholder. Now, every SVG that we're going to pass into this component, we need to make sure that it has in the SVG tag a fill equal fill color property. Okay, so I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it down here as well. Now then, so we're going to go ahead and delete all of this, and we're going to replace it with a substitute formula. Now, substitute takes a piece of text as one parameter, and then asks you what you want to replace and then what you replace it with. So the text that we're going to use as our source text is our passed in icon text. So comp button template dot prop icon. And then what we're looking for is this fill equal fill color. So fill equal fill color. And then what we're going to replace it with is fill equal single quote, and then we have a double quote to close it off, concatenate that with our if that we have here, and then we have to have one last single quote at the end, and that's going to be our substitute. So it's going to then take all of that and encode it into the URL, and we'll be off to the races. Okay, now then, nice clean formula. We need to go pass it some SVG data. So let's go out to our screen and let's click on one of our menus and let's search for our comp button template that we just created, and boom, there it is. It's still got that dark blue background, so let's actually go, let's get rid of that. That was just there for our development purposes. Now we're gonna make it transparent, and we go back out, and there it is, looking lovely. So let's do the easy part first. We're gonna make the title, let's see, the title for our first one is user profile. Okay, so there it is. As soon as we updated it, boom. Now, I've got all of my icons pulled up in VS Code, and what we need to do is we need to go through and make sure that we've got that fill equal fill color in the SVG tag of each of these icons, and also delete any extra fills that show up. So what we're going to do is in all of these icons, I've got them all filled with white. So we're going to go through and we're going to do a find, replace in files, and we're going to search for that fill, and we're going to replace it with nothing. We're just going to get rid of them all, and that gets rid of all those extra fills. Now then, we're going to come in and we're going to take our SVG tag SVG space, and we're going to place it with SVG space fill equal fill color space. Make sure you have that trailing space on there, or nothing, it will just not work. And then we replace all in all 9 of our files, and boom, our SVGs are now ready to go. They've already been treated, pulling all of the double quotes out and replacing with single quotes. They're ready to go. And remember, we don't need XML, we just need the SVG tag. So our user profile is ready. We grab it, we come over to our Power Apps, and then for our component, in the prop icon, we paste that in, and there's our icon ready to go. We click on it, our color is there, it's just as we expect. Let's just do one more here together, and again, comp button template, and then this one is our messages button, and we're gonna say messages, and then over here, I've got that open and ready, and we'll copy, and we will paste, and there we go, messages ready to go. Now, before we build out the rest of these, there's one thing I forgot. These components will come in with the hard-coded width and height of the component itself, but we want this to be responsive, so we need to come in here to our width and make sure that it sizes with the parent.width, and same thing with height. Actually, they're square, so let's just do self.width as well. Okay? Now, through the magic of editing, let's knock out the rest of these really fast. So, our completed menu setup, looking sharp on a phone and also looking sharp on our little iPad. Now, the responsive is not perfect in terms of how it's created for a full-size window. It's not made for that. It's truly just a mobile experience, but otherwise looking very sharp. So there you go. SVG icons applied to a custom menu interface using a component, a great and powerful way to create once and then reuse it as much as you want. Hope that you learned something today, and again, just make sure that as you are creating your apps that you don't just think about function, but also form. How does your app make somebody feel when they use it? I know that we're usually programmed to just making something that works, but we all know how much more pleasant of an experience it is when we are using a piece of software that not only works well, but looks great. Keep that in mind as you are designing your next Power App. I'm Ryan Johnston, and now you go out and create something amazing.